Ivan Harrison, the CEO of a tech empire, never imagined a simple toy car would kickstart his personal transformation. One chilly autumn morning in Central Park, as the wind rustled dry leaves, two twin boys, Zeke and Lion Wilson, clutched their worn but still gleaming red toy car. With hopeful blue eyes, the boys had set up shop on a park bench, trying to sell the toy to buy medicine their ailing mother desperately needed. After several failed attempts to catch the eye of hurried passers-by, a man in an expensive suit walked past, oblivious to the youngster's silent plea. That's when Ivan, en route to an important meeting, drove through the park in his sleek car. Something about the twins' simple honesty and distress caught his attention when he overheard their heartfelt plea. They wanted to sell the toy, an object of such sentimental value, to take care of their sick mom. Impressed and touched by such a human moment, the CEO, who usually operated solely on numbers and strategies, gave in to emotion and offered a generous sum of cash. With wide eyes and the toy car reluctantly handed over, the twins accepted the help, showing the courage of two young souls who, despite their size, carried the weight of unconditional love. Moved by this unexpected encounter, Ivan decided to follow the boys to their modest apartment building, determined to better understand a reality so far removed from his corporate world. And so, that day, destiny intervened in a surprising way. The millionaire CEO began to see that behind every business deal, there are human stories filled with challenges and hopes capable of transforming lives forever. The building's hallway reeked of persistent mold and despair. Ivan climbed 4 flights of stairs, guided by the lively sound of children's voices, until he reached a door with peeling paint. He hesitated and knocked firmly. The door opened just enough to reveal, suspiciously, one of the twins. "It's the man from the park," the boy announced over his shoulder, looking confused. When the door opened wider, both boys appeared, their faces showing uncertainty. Behind them, Ivan could see a small, simple apartment and the silhouette of a woman lying on a mattress. In a softened tone, Ivan asked if he could come in. After a brief hesitation, one of the twins stepped aside, letting him enter. Despite the poverty, the apartment's interior was clean and clutter-free, holding only the absolute necessities. In a low voice, one of the boys explained that "Mommy is sleeping," possibly referring to Lion, though it wasn't clear. Samantha Wilson lay on the thin mattress, her breathing labored, her grayish skin a stark contrast to the worn sheets. Even in her weakened state, there were unmistakable features that resembled her sons' faces, though now etched with suffering. Quietly asking how long she had been like this, Zeke revealed it had been weeks. His small shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Kneeling beside the mattress, Ivan gently touched Samantha's feverish arm and stated, with conviction, that she needed hospital care. The twins' immediate response was to point out their lack of money, justifying their attempt to sell the toy car to help. Seeing the toy still in his pocket and the desperate faces before him, Ivan made it clear he'd take care of it. Even with the boys' doubt about how they could repay him, Ivan reminded them that since they'd already sold the toy, it was now his turn to act. Without waiting for confirmation, he carefully picked up Samantha, despite her incoherent murmurs, and carried her down the stairs toward his waiting car. Lion, holding his mother's hand, innocently asked where they were going, and Ivan replied that he was taking her to people who could help, already dialing his phone. At that moment, Ivan reflected on what compelled him to intervene. For years, he had isolated himself in his empire, avoiding reliving the pain of the past. However, the boy's situation and the apartment's dire condition broke down his defenses. Looking at their worried faces, he understood that his carefully compartmentalized life had irrevocably intertwined with theirs. Upon arriving at the emergency room, Ivan's presence drew attention and expedited their care. Within minutes, Doctors were examining Samantha, while nurses led the boys to nearby chairs. A doctor murmured about severe dehydration and possible kidney failure, which was confirmed shortly after with the information that she had been in that condition for weeks. Despite the uncertainty about her recovery, Ivan promptly authorized all necessary procedures and treatments, signing forms and providing his insurance information as if he had always been part of Samantha's journey. Hours later, sitting in a quiet hallway, he found the exhausted boys beside him, their worry still palpable. When Lion, his voice trembling, asked if his mom was going to die, Ivan, turning his gaze to the boy's scared eyes, assured him she was getting the best treatment possible. Zeke then cautiously asked about their future, reminding him that the hospital wouldn't be a permanent home. It was then, before he even fully thought it through, that Ivan assured them, "You two will stay with me until your mom gets better," a promise met with doubtful looks from the boys. "Your house must be huge," Lion commented moments later, trying to imagine the space. "Yes," Ivan confirmed, feeling a strange self-confidence bloom from his wealth, something rare for him in years. "There's plenty of room for both of you." When Samantha was finally stabilized and asleep, a nurse approached with papers and questions about arrangements for the children. With natural firmness, Ivan took charge and explained that the boys would be under his responsibility. His confident tone left no room for doubt or questioning. As they got ready to leave, Ivan watched the twins say goodbye to their unconscious mother, each placing a soft kiss on her forehead, a gesture that squeezed his heart. These kids, marked by so many hardships, showed a resilience and affection that stirred long-dormant feelings in Ivan. The drive to Ivan's estate passed in silence. The boys, huddled together in the back seat, exchanged occasional whispers. As the urban landscape morphed into orderly suburbs and then the private road leading to the mansion, their exhaustion gave way to growing awe at the sheer size of the imposing residence, highlighted by the subtle exterior lighting. "Do you live here all by yourself?" Zeke asked as he got out of the car. Ivan nodded, now seeing his house through the children's eyes. Grand, impressive, but missing what truly mattered. "Not tonight," he said calmly, leading them toward the massive front doors. "Tonight, you're part of this home too." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows as Zeke and Lion cautiously explored their new temporary home. The mansion's grandeur captivated the boys. Crystal chandeliers adorning vaulted ceilings, artworks worth more than all their meager possessions combined, and hallways leading to countless rooms. "Do you think he has a pool?" Lion whispered, excited. "Probably 3, Zeke replied, running his hand along a marble railing. The boys had spent the night in a guest suite larger than their old apartment, in beds so soft they seemed to float. Though worry for their mother was always present, childish wonder momentarily eclipsed any fear as they uncovered every corner of Ivan's estate. While the boys settled in, Ivan watched them from his home office, a cup of coffee in hand, already making calls and organizing details, instructing the housekeeper to get supplies for the twins and postponing commitments due to Samantha's ongoing treatment. He couldn't quite explain the full nuances of his actions, despite his completely calm resolve. The hospital called, Ivan announced when the boys approached. "Your mom is stable and responding well to treatment." The boys' faces lit up with shared relief. "Can we see her today?" Lion asked hopefully. "This afternoon," Ivan assured them. "Have you eaten yet?" Without needing another invitation, the boys shook their heads. So, Ivan led them to the kitchen, where Mrs. Johnson, the housekeeper, had already prepared breakfast. She raised an eyebrow at the unusual guests but served the plates discreetly. "Eat up," Ivan ordered, checking his phone, messages piling up. The boys devoured the meal with an almost desperate hunger. Later, as Ivan answered emails, He heard a commotion outside his office. "You can't go in there," Mrs. Johnson stated firmly. Opening the door, Ivan found Zeke trying to peek inside. His gaze fixed on a room at the end of the hall, a room he always kept locked. "That door is off limits," Mrs. Johnson explained apologetically. "I already tried to tell them." "It's all right," Ivan interrupted, his voice tense, turning to the twins. "That room is private. The rest of the house is free for you to explore. But that space will remain closed, understood?" Both boys nodded, subdued by the sudden rigidity in Ivan's tone. That afternoon, Ivan's driver took them back to the hospital. Samantha, now awake despite her weakness, brightened when she saw her sons. "My boys," she whispered, gently hugging them. "I was so worried." "Ma'am, Mr. Harrison made sure we stayed at his house, Mommy," Lion explained enthusiastically. "It's huge." Samantha's eyes met Ivan's, who stood uncomfortably at the entrance. "I don't know how to thank you," she murmured softly. "No need," Ivan replied curtly. The doctor arrived with news, explaining Samantha's condition simply for the twins. "Your mom's kidneys weren't working well. We're helping filter her blood while she recovers. Will she get better?" Zeke asked, holding her hand. "With proper treatment, yes, though it will take time," the doctor confirmed. On the way back, the boys were quiet, absorbing everything that was happening. "Why are you helping us?" Lion finally broke the silence. Ivan glanced out the window, watching the city pass by and recalling the years he'd isolated himself, focused only on his empire. Why risk letting these strangers into his life? "Sometimes people just need a helping hand," he replied, avoiding revealing anything deeper. That night, after the twins had fallen asleep, Ivan stood before the locked door, the key held firmly in his hand. Behind that door lay everything he tried to forget: photos, toys, and memories preserved like insects in amber. His fingers tightened on the key for a brief moment, but then he let go. Not tonight, maybe never. Behind him, the residence took on a new identity. It was no longer just an empty monument to success, but a home that, for now, was filled with the vibrancy of children. This change brought a paradoxical feeling, comforting yet at the same time frightening. A week later, an unexpected rhythm settled in. Every morning, Ivan woke up earlier than usual, lulled by the sounds of life rescued from his former silence. The twins' footsteps, their quiet conversations, and even their small squabbles, which now formed the mansion's new soundtrack. Ivan's staff showed impressive adaptation, though still permeated with curiosity. Mrs. Johnson stocked the kitchen with kid-friendly food, while the gardener found himself constantly bombarded with endless questions about the gardens and those two nearly identical shadows that accompanied him. "Mr. Harrison," Zeke approached while Ivan worked in his home office. "Can we visit Mom today?" Ivan, checking his watch, replied, "We'll go after lunch." "And how's your room?" "It's awesome," Zeke replied, his eyes shining. Lion found a chess set in the closet. "Do you still know how to play?" Ivan, his fingers pausing on the keyboard, commented, "I used to play. Could you teach us sometime?" The boy asked, his eyes hopeful, making the offer hard to refuse. "Maybe," Ivan replied, returning to his work. Zeke hesitated for a few moments before leaving Ivan alone with an unexpected wave of emotion. At the hospital, Samantha's improvement was clear. Her skin had regained its color, and she sat up to hug her sons as they bounced excitedly around the room. "The doctors say I'm responding well to treatment," she commented to Ivan, while the twins explored the small hospital room. "I don't even know how I'll—" "Don't," Ivan interrupted firmly. "Just focus on getting better." Later, as the twins chatted animatedly with a nurse, Samantha looked at Ivan more closely and in a whisper asked, "You don't have children, do you?" Ivan's posture stiffened momentarily. "No," he replied, and then after a pause added, "Not anymore." Samantha's eyes widened slightly at the implication, but before she could comment, Lion caught her attention, interrupting the moment. That night, dinner at the mansion was suddenly interrupted by a crash from the living room. Ivan and Mrs. Johnson rushed to the scene, where they found Zeke standing, his face etched with horror, before the scattered shards of an ancient vase. "Sorry," the boy stammered, his eyes wide with fear. "I was just looking. I didn't mean to." Ivan carefully examined the damage. The rare piece, acquired at an auction years ago, lay in pieces irreparable. "You're not hurt?" he inquired calmly. Zeke shook his head, visibly bracing for a reprimand. "Good," Ivan murmured. "Mrs. Johnson, please clean this up." To Zeke's surprise, Ivan simply turned and returned to the dining room. "You're not mad?" Zeke asked, approaching timidly. After a brief pause, Ivan stated, "It's just a thing. Things can be replaced." Later that same night, unable to sleep, Ivan wandered through the dark rooms of the house. Passing the twins' bedroom, he heard a soft cry. Hesitantly, he opened the door quietly. In bed, he found Lion awake, tears streaming down his face, while Zeke slept soundly in the bed next to him. "What's wrong?" Ivan asked, his voice low. "I miss Mom," Lion whispered. "What if she doesn't get better?" Sitting carefully on the edge of the bed, Ivan tried to comfort him. "The doctors are excellent. She's already making progress." Lion looked up, his tear-streaked eyes exposed in the dim light of the room. "Remember when Dad died when we were 5? Mom always said that sometimes people just don't come back." Those simple words shook Ivan with an unexpected intensity. Without thinking much, he awkwardly reached out and lightly patted the boy's shoulder. "Your mom will be back," he promised with conviction. "Now try to sleep." As he closed the door, Ivan felt something shift within him. A small crack in the wall that always protected his heart, letting in pain and something he couldn't yet name. After 2 weeks of living together, the mansion had completely transformed. School books now occupied the dining room table, a result of the temporary education project Ivan had organized. Kids' jackets hung side by side with expensive coats in the entryway. The immaculately controlled silence had given way to lively conversations and occasional laughter. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Samantha was being discharged for outpatient treatment. Ivan's driver brought her directly from the hospital, and the impatient twins jumped near the door until they caught sight of the car approaching. "Mommy!" they exclaimed in unison, running downstairs as Samantha emerged, still thin but standing firmly, color returning to her face. Ivan watched, standing in the doorway, as the family embraced, feeling both a participant and a mere spectator of that precious moment. Samantha, noticing Ivan's gaze, smiled warmly. Immediately, something pulsed in his chest. "Welcome," he greeted her simply. "It's incredible," Samantha commented, marveling at the mansion's grandeur. "In a way, we can't even afford to impose too much." "You're not imposing," Ivan gently interrupted. "The doctor recommended you rest and continue with treatment. This arrangement is actually the most practical." Behind him, the residence took on a new appearance. It was no longer simply a cold monument to his success, but was transforming, if only for now, into a home filled with the children's energy. This new vibrancy brought an ambiguous feeling, at once comforting and frightening. After a week, an unusual rhythm settled into the routine. Every morning, Ivan found himself waking up earlier than usual, as the sounds of life, The boys' footsteps, their quiet conversations, and even distant laughter broke the silence that once dominated the house. The little ones naturally took on their roles, showing their mother every discovery. The corners of the gardens, the new chess lessons that Ivan had reluctantly started, and even the planets that Ivan's telescope allowed them to see. During dinner, it was the twins' turn to lead the conversation, sharing news and curiosities about their day. In a brief lull, Samantha calmly asked, "You've been teaching them to play chess?" Ivan just nodded, visibly uncomfortable with her curious gaze. "They asked for it themselves. He said, Mom, that we're learning fast because of our spatial reasoning," Ivan completed, trying to soften the comment. Samantha smiled, recognizing the children's precocious intelligence, but her expression soon deepened. "We need to talk about the future. The doctor informed me that I'll need continuous treatment for several months, and I also need to adjust my professional routine. One step at a time," Ivan calmly interjected. "Your therapy is already arranged. The rest can wait." If you're enjoying our journey, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss out on more stories narrated right here on our channel. Later, after the boys had fallen asleep, Ivan found Samantha in the library. She was absorbed, examining a selection of family photos, carefully chosen images depicting everything from Ivan's parents to moments of his business achievements, though some gaps remained. "Thank you," Samantha said without turning, her voice laden with gratitude. "Not just for the medical care but for making my boys feel safe. They've lived without stability for so long." Ivan remained at the door, watching her in silence. "And they mentioned a locked room," she continued with some caution. "They think it might be full of treasures." With a sudden stiffening of his shoulders, Ivan replied, "Just a storage space," though the truth was otherwise. Samantha turned, studying him with a gentle, discerning look. "I understand about privacy, Mr. Harrison. We all have parts of ourselves we keep locked away." The sincerity and simplicity in her voice made something within him yield. For so many years, he'd been forced to hide his past, as if it were a ticking time bomb. Samantha's direct approach was like an antidote to that constant defense. "Ivan," she finally said. He interrupted. "Please call me Ivan." She smiled and agreed. "Ivan, then." A silence filled with unspoken questions hung between them. "I should get some rest," Samantha finally declared. "Good night, Ivan." She left, leaving him alone with his thoughts. In his office, Ivan poured himself a drink, reflecting on how quickly these strangers had invaded his meticulously constructed solitude. What bothered him wasn't so much their presence, but the looming fear that one day they would have to leave. Instinctively, his hand went to his pocket where the twins' toy car still rested. In the soft lamplight, he carefully ran his thumb over the worn edges of the toy, thinking about how something so simple could trigger such a profound transformation in his life. With the quarterly report forgotten on his desk, Ivan settled into his office. Outside, he could hear the boys' laughter as they kicked a ball across the lawn, a sound that, even penetrating the heavy windows, managed to invade the sanctuary he'd maintained for so many years. 3 weeks had passed since Samantha was discharged from the hospital. Her health was slowly recovering, but the medical team insisted on rest between treatments. While the temporary arrangement showed no signs of imminent change, Ivan's internal conflict intensified. Suddenly, his phone vibrated with a new message from his executive assistant. "Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Please confirm your attendance." Ivan, who had been adapting his work remotely, quickly typed "confirmed" and set the device aside. Rumors about his absence circulated, but his team skillfully managed the situation, even if few could understand that the ruthless business magnate now housed a single mother and her boys. Soon after, his office door opened gently and Lion peeked through the gap. "Mr. Ivan, Mom said to tell you dinner's ready." Samantha, who insisted on cooking whenever she felt strong enough, a way to earn her keep, as she explained, despite Ivan's resistance, made simple meals a moment of togetherness at the dining table. "I'll be right there," Ivan replied. Lion, hesitant, asked, "Can I ask you something?" Inviting the boy in, Ivan nodded and Lion continued, "Why do you always keep that toy car in your pocket? The one we sold to you." Feeling the little boy's touch, Ivan's hand automatically went to the long-kept object. He hadn't realized Lion had noticed. "I'm not sure," he confessed after a brief silence. "It reminds me of something important." Lion nodded, showing an understanding beyond his years. "Thank you for everything," the boy murmured before returning for dinner. There, amidst that environment charged with new sensations, Ivan realized the transformations the children had unleashed in his life. Their presence not only filled the house with warmth and laughter, but also awakened in him a sense of belonging he had never imagined experiencing. Ivan began to wake with a renewed feeling, eager not only for business but also for the joy brought by the children who were now part of his life. One morning, as Lion approached, he recalled the old desk that belonged to Ivan's father. When directly asked about having children, Ivan felt uncomfortable admitting that, yes, he had had a son, whose tragic death in a car accident had marked his existence. Lion, with serene maturity, suggested that this youthful presence might have entered his life to offer help and comfort, a thought Ivan, though reluctant, couldn't ignore. Soon after this brief conversation, the boys broke the heavy mood. Zeke announced that their mom had made spaghetti and invited Ivan to dinner. That night, the atmosphere in the dining room, previously reserved for formal dinners and business meetings, transformed into a cozy space, permeated by conversations about soccer and the twins' spontaneous laughter. Despite the lightness of dinner, Ivan couldn't help but worry about work demands. During an endless board meeting, his mind wandered to memories of the mansion and its new residents, reflecting on how much more real and normal that impromptu dinner had been than anything he'd experienced recently. Returning home that quiet night, Ivan followed the sound of voices that led him to the boys' room, where he found Samantha beside Zeke, whose face showed a persistent fever. Faced with the situation, Ivan promptly contacted his doctor, who, after a brief assessment, confirmed it was a common virus, recommending rest and hydration. Throughout the night, while monitoring Zeke, Ivan intently watched Samantha, exhausted but careful, who, even asleep, showed all the accumulated tension of recent months. The next morning, with the boys' fever finally broken, Ivan cancelled meetings and worked from home, always focused on the boys' recovery. In the afternoon, amidst stories invented by Lion to entertain Zeke, Samantha tactfully commented on Ivan's excessive worry. She observed that the boys were already calling him Mr. Ivan, a sign of the bond forming between them. Even aware that this calm was fleeting, as she would soon resume her routine and look for an apartment to keep her children, Samantha also revealed that her treatments were progressing positively, allowing for a reduction in sessions. Ivan felt in those words a mixture of relief and pain, along with the silent terror of the inevitable transformation of their lives, which, for a brief moment, intertwined on a common path of affection, care, and rebirth. Ivan remained seated in silence, his eyes fixed on the gloom that enveloped Thomas's old room. The air, imbued with memories and sorrow, seemed to have become a silent ally in the attempt to soothe old wounds. As time passed, that environment, once frozen in time, began to fill with new stories. In the following mornings, Ivan walked through the garden with Lion and Zeke, observing how the reborn green contrasted with the shadows of the past. Each blossoming petal seemed to carry the promise of a new beginning. During these moments, he found a strange peace. Nature, as ruthless as it was merciful, taught him that healing was a cycle, as inevitable as the blooming of spring buds. Samantha, always present with her kindness, began to bring small details that transformed the environment. A colorful blanket here, a vase of flowers there, and above all, a look that understood without needing many words. Together, they formed an unlikely trio where silence and laughter alternated, creating a melody that resembled the tales Thomas had once loved to hear. One afternoon, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Ivan found himself alone on the mansion's porch. Between sips of warm coffee and a gaze lost on the horizon, he realized that the boy's presence and Samantha's support were not just necessary conveniences. They were balm for a soul that, for so long, had been neglected. This realization was both comforting and terrifying, for it meant facing the pain of the past to truly embrace the present. Memories of his lost daughter danced in his mind, mingling with the boy's laughter and the light accounts of conversations with Samantha. The guilt he carried was a heavy burden, but now, by sharing memories and secrets with those who dared to approach, Ivan began to feel that redemption was within reach. In one of these moments of reflection, returning from a walk with Lion, he found Samantha organizing a small exhibition in the hallway. Old photos, toys, and symbolic objects that told Thomas's story. Each item seemed to whisper a forgotten truth, a chapter of a past that, despite being painful, provided lessons for the future. Samantha, her eyes shining with determination, looked at Ivan and said softly, "Every memory is a step forward for us to move on, although the ladder seems long and steep." That night, as the moon shyly appeared through the windows, Ivan felt something change within him. Not a sudden transformation, but a silent awakening to the possibility of rewriting his story. A narrative where the pain of the past merged with the hope of a new dawn. And so, in that once abandoned room, a new chapter began to be written, where love, loss, and the chance for redemption found a point of balance, marking the promise that, even in the midst of darkness, there was always a light ready to ignite. Ivan remained in the kitchen, absorbing the new changes that were subtly imposing themselves on his daily routine. The aroma of coffee mixed with the sweet scent of pancakes, now prepared with almost artisanal care by Samantha, filled the air with a promise of new beginnings and serenity. As the boys ran off to baseball, Ivan watched Samantha with a look that blended admiration and apprehension. He remembered the cold, solitary days when the house felt empty, where silence was the only sound. Now, every gesture, every laugh from the little ones, made the house come alive again, as if every corner was re-emerging through shared memories and rediscovered affections. They sat at the table for a brief pause. Samantha, still with that serene smile, commented, "You know, Ivan, I've always thought life could be a collection of unexpected moments. Today, more than ever, I feel like we have the chance to build something new, something valuable." Ivan nodded, her words echoing within him. "I used to be so rigid, so tied to a routine that I believed was the only way to keep everything under control. But today, seeing the boys radiant and feeling this peace, it makes me think that maybe it's time to put work aside a bit, to make room for the unpredictable." The distant sound of laughter in the street and the neighborhood's bustle formed a light symphony, marking the beginning of a day where the future seemed less daunting and more welcoming. He realized that, despite the fears and insecurities of the past, that moment was an invitation to vulnerability, and with it, an opening for deeper relationships. The conversation between them unfolded with a naturalness that contrasted with the intensity of the silences that used to fill the mansion's corridors. Samantha shared her plans to take better care of herself, while Ivan, though hesitant, spoke about a possible flexible schedule, allowing more time to be present alongside those who now occupied his heart. In an almost imperceptible gesture, Samantha touched his hand, a touch that sealed a silent pact. A pact that change was impossible without risk, but also inevitable in the pursuit of a more meaningful life. That Saturday, under the soft morning light and the warmth of shared closeness, Ivan learned that true freedom didn't just come from professional autonomy, but from the courage to surrender to love and vulnerability. And as the boys radiated joy heading to the park, and the sound of their laughter spread through the neighborhood, a new chapter began. A chapter where fears were confronted and joys multiplied. Ivan and Samantha found themselves in the bleachers at the field, where the boys were warming up before the game. While other parents watched from afar, Ivan's quiet reputation spoke for itself even before his arrival. There, Samantha noticed that the children were not only growing physically but also becoming happier and more confident, a result of both their dedication. Later, as night fell and after the twins were in bed, the couple settled on the terrace in the soft spring air, enveloped by the scent of flowers. Amidst property listings Samantha had been researching, Ivan, with renewed courage, suggested they make that moment permanent. Exhausted by conventions and judgments, he proposed they stop pretending everything was temporary, offering a chance for whatever was real between them, without rushing for immediate answers. As the season progressed, summer transformed not only the gardens but also the atmosphere of the house. Formal spaces gave way to a playful environment. Children's drawings adorned the refrigerator, colorful sneakers were scattered by the entrance, and children's laughter echoed through the once silent hallways. 3 months after the terrace proposal, even without a definitive decision from Samantha, a familiar and welcoming rhythm had solidified. On a Saturday morning during breakfast, the boys surprised them by presenting a turtle they had found near the lake. Excited by the discovery, they began to conceptualize a habitat for the little reptile, showing how the family dynamic was expanding with enthusiasm. Ivan, once distant in his business decisions, found himself involved in the day's tasks, kneeling in the dirt to teach the twins how to develop a drainage system for the animal's new home. While they worked on the project together, both Samantha and the housekeeper, and even Mrs. Johnson, who brought lemonade from the garden, silently witnessed the formidable CEO's transformation. The old severe image softened, giving way to a man who, alongside the woman he cared for, found in the simplicity of shared moments the reconstruction of his own way of living. After putting the twins to sleep, Ivan and Samantha went to the library, where, armed with wine glasses, they resumed a ritual that had become routine. There, immersed in a tranquil atmosphere punctuated only by the ticking of an old clock and the sounds of the house settling, they reflected on the changes that time had brought them. Samantha, admiring the state of the habitat Ivan had created, a space that, in a way, revealed his past as an environmental engineer, lightly hinted that he no longer followed his old ideals. Ivan, in turn, reacted with a relaxed smile, acknowledging that, although his executive team had assumed responsibilities in his absence, certain challenges and memories were still present. The intimate atmosphere was temporarily broken by the news of a new professional offer Samantha received as an administrative director at an NGO. Although the salary was modest, the offer included important flexibility for the continuation of her treatment. This prospect, however, came with dilemmas. The possibility of leaving the home that was slowly becoming a refuge for everyone, where the boys already considered the house, and Ivan, a familiar and almost paternal figure. As the conversation gained new layers of meaning, both revealed long-suppressed feelings. Samantha saw in Ivan not only the successful executive he once was, but also the sensitive man capable of reinventing himself between natural habitats and children's games. Ivan, touched by Samantha's and the children's sincerity and warm presence, confessed his fear of the depth of the bonds that had formed. Bonds that made him dread losing everything he had unexpectedly begun to truly live. At dawn the next day in his office, Ivan contemplated a small velvet box that held an old family ring. The piece, recovered after his conversation with Samantha, symbolized new possibilities and, at the same time, filled him with paralysis in the face of the decisions that loomed. It was then that Lion's voice, at 10 years old, interrupted his thoughts with a delicate perception of the harmony that reigned in the house. The boy's simple words highlighted how indispensable Samantha and Ivan were and how, in fact, the home united them in an undeniable way. Ivan and Samantha found themselves in the stands at the field, where the boys were warming up before the game. While other parents watched from afar, Ivan's quiet reputation preceded him. There, Samantha noticed that the children were not only growing physically but also becoming happier and more self-confident, a result of both their dedication. Later, as night fell and after the twins were in bed, the couple settled on the terrace in the soft spring air, enveloped by the scent of flowers. Amidst property listings Samantha had been researching, Ivan, with renewed courage, suggested they make that moment permanent. Exhausted by conventions and judgments, he proposed they stop pretending everything was temporary, offering a chance for whatever was real between them, without rushing for immediate answers. As the season progressed, summer transformed not only the gardens but also the atmosphere of the house. Formal spaces gave way to a playful environment. Children's drawings adorned the refrigerator, colorful sneakers were scattered by the entrance, and children's laughter echoed through the once silent hallways. 3 months after the terrace proposal, even without a definitive decision from Samantha, a familiar and welcoming rhythm had solidified. On a Saturday morning during breakfast, the boys surprised them by presenting a turtle they had found near the lake. Excited by the discovery, they began to conceptualize a habitat for the little reptile, showing how the family dynamic was expanding with enthusiasm. Ivan, once distant in his business decisions, found himself involved in the day's tasks, kneeling in the dirt to teach the twins how to develop a drainage system for the animal's new home. While they worked on the project together, both Samantha and the housekeeper, and even Mrs. Johnson, who brought lemonade from the garden, silently witnessed the formidable CEO's transformation. The old severe image softened, giving way to a man who, alongside the woman he cared for, found in the simplicity of shared moments the reconstruction of his own way of living. After putting the twins to sleep, Ivan and Samantha went to the library, where, armed with wine glasses, they resumed a ritual that had become routine. There, immersed in a tranquil atmosphere punctuated only by the ticking of an old clock and the sounds of the house settling, they reflected on the changes that time had brought them. Samantha, admiring the state of the habitat Ivan had created, a space that, in a way, revealed his past as an environmental engineer, lightly hinted that he no longer followed his old ideals. Ivan, in turn, reacted with a relaxed smile, acknowledging that, although his executive team had assumed responsibilities in his absence, certain challenges and memories were still present. The intimate atmosphere was temporarily broken by the news of a new professional offer Samantha received as an administrative director at an NGO. Although the salary was modest, the offer included important flexibility for the continuation of her treatment. This prospect, however, came with dilemmas. The possibility of leaving the home that was slowly becoming a refuge for everyone, where the boys already considered the house, and Ivan, a familiar and almost paternal figure. As the conversation gained new layers of meaning, both revealed long-suppressed feelings. Samantha saw in Ivan not only the successful executive he once was, but also the sensitive man capable of reinventing himself between natural habitats and children's games. Ivan, touched by Samantha's and the children's sincerity and warm presence, confessed his fear of the depth of the bonds that had formed. Bonds that made him dread losing everything he had unexpectedly begun to truly live. At dawn the next day in his office, Ivan contemplated a small velvet box that held an old family ring. The piece, recovered after his conversation with Samantha, symbolized new possibilities and, at the same time, filled him with paralysis in the face of the decisions that loomed. It was then that Lion's voice, at 10 years old, interrupted his thoughts with a delicate perception of the harmony that reigned in the house. The boy's simple words highlighted how indispensable Samantha and Ivan were and how, in fact, the home united them in an undeniable way. During lunch, as Ivan observed the lightness and joy emanating from Samantha and the children, he proposed a trip to the property's lake, a spot that, with its boathouse and pier, had become their favorite warm afternoon retreat. At the end of that journey, as the sun set on the horizon and the boys' laughter filled the air, Samantha reaffirmed that she would take more time to reflect on the NGO's proposal. In response, Ivan, discreetly caressing the ring box in his pocket, was confronted with the reasons that made him hesitate. In an instant of intimacy, their feelings intertwined. Both recognized that their mutual presence, forged between challenges and rediscoveries, was what truly allowed them to live. Ivan recalled, with a certain emotion, how a simple gift for the boys had transformed not only the environment but his own way of looking at life, filling it with noise, chaos, and joy. Thus, in that twilight, the rediscovery of family and sincere affection asserted itself as the natural path, even if it involved letting go of old certainties to embrace a future full of risks and, most importantly, true love. Ivan reflected on his journey, remembering those boys desperate to save their mother, which made him relive the memory of Thomas and realize that his help went far beyond a mere good deed. In a silent exchange of glances, he understood that caring for others meant caring deeply and transformatively. Thus, unable to imagine life without Samantha, without the laughter echoing through the house, and without the essence of the family they had formed, he shared his feelings with her. As the twins played in the water, Ivan recalled his old idea that he didn't deserve happiness, interpreting his survival as a kind of punishment. But, unlike before, he felt that the boys, in their innocent way, wanted him and Samantha to find complete happiness. At this decisive moment, Ivan took a small box containing an old emerald ring from his pocket, a symbol of the risks and new opportunities that awaited them. Without offering guarantees of safety or financial stability, he proposed a genuine partnership that would respect the past but project itself into a future built with love and complicity. The proposal, which in its essence transcended all expectations, was quietly and emotionally accepted by Samantha, who, with teary eyes, confirmed their union. The ring was carefully placed on her finger, sealing the new commitment between them. The moment, interrupted only by the curious footsteps of the twins, was gently re-signified when the children, with attentive eyes and an infectious innocence, perceived the transformation and showed their acceptance with questions and smiles. 6 months after this decision, the engagement announcement provoked intense reactions in Boston's elite circles. During a charity gala, Ivan introduced Samantha to colleagues and business partners, showing with delicate gestures and a confident smile that he had transformed. Samantha's presence, radiant in a midnight blue dress that highlighted the ring's sparkle, aroused curiosity and compliments, while Ivan genuinely seemed happy with his choice. In the midst of the festive atmosphere, as they swayed to a waltz, the couple silently reaffirmed that their new shared life was the fruit of a rare second chance. Back home, with the twins still awake and full of questions about the elegant party they had witnessed, the new routine reaffirmed the joy and surprise of a family that, rewritten in every gesture and emotion, transformed the scars of the past into a promise of a united and loving future. Ivan felt a deep emotion hearing the boys call him Dad, a title he never imagined receiving again. Despite his practical attitude and even his disdain for tedious conversations, every time the boys expressed their innocent joy, he remembered the silent miracle the new family represented. Amidst the lightness of the days, routine was filled with small victories. The twins proudly showed off their school triumphs, an A on a science project and a special part in the school play, while harmony and affection were present in every gesture. These moments of simplicity and daily achievements strengthened the partnership between Ivan and Samantha, who strive to build a home full of love and triumph. At the end of the day, after convincing the boys to retire for rest, the couple found refuge at the door of Thomas's room, a space that, instead of erasing memories of the past, transformed into a bridge connecting old experiences to the new life they now shared. Samantha, with sensitivity, insisted on keeping the legacy of that room alive, reinforcing that the past was part of their family's construction. With the wedding approaching, only 3 weeks away, an atmosphere of complicity permeated the preparations. Between jokes about possible small mishaps at the ceremony and plans for a charming celebration, Ivan and Samantha indulged in the dream of making this bond official, a bond that, though always real, gained a new dimension each day. In a ceremony that radiated the joy of the season and the promise of second chances, the couple renewed their vows before family and friends. As he slid the ring engraved with the words "Second Chances" onto Samantha's finger, Ivan understood that, by transforming the scars and challenges of the past into hope, they not only united but also solidified the love that had restored everyone's lives. A simple, true love capable of healing seemingly irreparable wounds. If this journey resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to explore more narrated stories on our channel. And remember, share this video with anyone who loves discovering powerful, unexpected stories. Thank you for being here with us on this journey. Your presence and support mean the world, and it's what inspires us to keep sharing these stories. We're grateful to have you as part of our community. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. Your voice makes all the difference. Let's keep exploring these journeys together. If this journey resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to explore more narrated stories on our channel. And remember, share this video with anyone who loves discovering powerful, unexpected stories.